Welcome to episode 44 of the Self-Care 101 podcast, helping you to crush overwhelm, stay focused and live better, with your host, Puja McClymont. Thank you so much for listening today. In this episode, I'm interviewing Mel Maw, founder of the Lifestyle VA, helping clients turn their chaos into calm. We last spoke to Mel in episode 9 of the podcast about how travel can be therapy, where Mel took us on her journey from sabbatical to relocating to Bali for a year to coming back to London and setting up her own business. This episode is about anxiety, specifically how Mel navigates her anxiety as a business owner as well as through the pandemic as someone who has had to shield. The Lifestyle VA is founded with over 15 years of experience, where Mel worked as a top executive assistant for some of the world's most exceptional and fascinating C-suite execs, entrepreneurs and businesses across London, New York and Asia. Since being back in the UK and with the extra time provided by COVID, Mel has had the opportunity to grow her business, which has naturally come with its challenges as well as successes. Mel now has an expert team of VAs that work their magic to change the way clients work and give them a seriously beautiful, organised life. This episode covers some practical tips Mel uses to navigate the world and her chronic anxiety, plus some tips on how to push through when you're having a super tough day. So let's get to it. Hi, Mel.
Hey Pooch, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for doing the show again.
Thank you for having me. It's really lovely to be back.
Well, we've got a good show today. I'm excited about it. So when did we last speak? We last spoke on the podcast in episode 9 about how travel can be therapy. And God, could we do with some travel right now?
Yes, tell me about it. That was probably last autumn, to be fair. It was quite a while ago now.
Yeah. Well, the podcast launched in October, actually. So, yeah, I think it was.
Yeah.
Back then, God, yeah, I could really do getting on a plane right now. But there we go.
How the world has changed.
Wow, right? Let's not even start on that one. It's a whole other show. So, I've just introed you a little bit about, what you've been up to. Now, my hair's going to annoy me, isn't it, during this show? But yes, so you fell in love with Bali whilst you were on sabbatical.
I did.
You started your own business, the Lifestyle VA, out of your suitcase, in your own words. And you've been back in the UK for a bit now. And with all the drama of 2020, you've also had to be fielding during lockdown.
Yes.
Taking care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that you have risen up during this time, and with that extra time you've had the opportunity to grow your business, which is mega exciting. So big congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I know today's a very special day. You are launching a bunch of services, which is very exciting. So I'm very
excited to tell you more about that as well.
So let's get on with the show with you introducing yourself. So what is the Lifestyle VA? What is a VA and what is the Lifestyle VA?
Well, so I'm Mel. I run and I'm founder of the Lifestyle VA, which is a virtual assistant business. And we look after the administrative needs of my clients are creators, disruptors, innovators, thought leaders, and future thinkers. They're a very, very cool band of women. Funny enough, I've ended up with all women and they are phenomenal, and they're daily inspiration because they're not only phenomenal, they're kind and humble and curious, and they're appreciative. And what we do for them is everything that you imagine a personal assistant or an executive assistant to do, at a desk just for one boss, like PA to the CEO. Virtual assistants work on the basis of you don't necessarily need someone full time, but you only need them for a certain amount of hours per week. Like my busiest client is a global speaker. She runs a tech agency, and I only work for her part-time because once you're actually getting that high level of admin service, you fall into a beautiful routine and they don't need full-time help. So I'm able to work with multiple people. And I've now built a team. I have 1 or 2 other VAs, associate VAs working with me, and we're growing, which is fantastic. So I just basically take everyone's chaos and turn it into calm. And I'm a big fat geek, so I love it.
I love that. So if you weren't my friend, I would outsource all of my chaos, of which there is so much. Um, I would totally outsource it to you. Maybe to one of your newbies, because I don't think, as a friend, I don't think you should see that side of each other. I think
I
that
think there's always a cautious line between friends, money, and help, and telling you how to run your life is not a good idea, especially when it comes to you.
no, me, I'm far too direct. Actually, that's funny to talk about being direct, because I was rewarded for being direct this weekend with a really big win, and I can't really talk about it right now, but let's
Ooh.
say the guy hired me because I was direct, and never have I ever been celebrated for my directness. So I was like, oh my God, talk about, coming full circle in life. Hey, I've just turned a negative into a major positive. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Tenacity, Poos, that's what you've got.
I know I use the word tenacity everywhere. It's like,
Resilience, tenacity.
I'm determined, I don't quit. You know that about me. So
I do.
let's get a bit more serious now, because I think that, like, it's amazing what you're doing as a business owner. Amazing, after the sabbatical, coming back, adjusting, and then deciding to stay, because when you came back, you hadn't decided from Bali whether you were actually committing to the UK or not. And you were very sort of, I don't know if I'm going to get somewhere to rent. I don't know if I'm going to do this. I don't know if I'm going to travel again. And then this business, obviously, not so much organically, but I guess it's grown organically since you've been here, and then you've identified need, and then you've expanded your network of VAs as well, and then that community grows, and obviously you're now where you are at this growth stage, which is super exciting.
2 years in.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So with that said, you also really struggle with anxiety, don't you?
Oh, yes, I do. I do for many years now. And it wasn't something that I really was aware that it was an actual diagnosable thing until I think about 4 or 5 years ago, when I lived with someone who had anxiety and was diagnosed and medicated. And we were reflecting the similar things. And it was at that point where I realized I wanted to crawl out of my own skin. I wanted to take my head off my shoulders. I couldn't be alone, but I didn't want to be with people. It was this spiral. And that's when I literally saw myself in her. And I thought, oh God, that's what it is. But then you can unpick it. Once you understand what it is, you can begin to educate yourself and try to understand it and find coping mechanisms. So yeah, it's been a journey.
And at the top of the call, before we started recording, before we put our lippy on and tried to get the fluff out of the hair, we were talking about anxiety, and I said, you've had it for quite a while, and you said you're a massive worrier. And I think that was a really important thing to say, because actually a lot of people do worry a lot, but they don't necessarily consider it anxiety. They just say, oh, I just worry. But obviously that worry is anxiety. It does it makes you anxious, and it does perpetuate that sort of spiral like you just mentioned. So tell me a little bit about what anxiety for you has looked like, and then we'll move on to sort of where you are now with your anxiety and how you manage it. So what did worrying look like when you first discovered that you had anxiety?
For me, I noticed that it was completely debilitating. I would get a very tight chest. I'd feel like I couldn't get my whole breath into my lungs. You get this kind of, when your breathing changes and it gets very shallow, you have that panic sensation. And my head was like my worst enemy. It was 1,000 thoughts going around and around and around. And then I would go into the nth degree of the what ifs. Like, what if this happens? But then if that happens, what if this happens? And then if this and that and da, 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 da. And before you know it, you're screaming inside your own head for a prolonged period of time. Yeah. And you actually wish that you could just take your head off your shoulders and put it down, because it's so exhausting carrying your own brain, because it's such a spiral. And it would, with me, I would really want to talk to somebody, not know where to start, and not want to burden them. But then I'd also desperately want to be on my own, but want to crawl out of my skin at the same time. It's this feeling of being so uncomfortable in your own mind and body, that it's physical, it's mental, it's emotional. And I would cancel plans. I would just be that last minute flake person because I didn't want to leave the house. It's very very debilitating at its worst. And it kind of comes in peaks and troughs. Like some attacks are terrible and you're crying uncontrollably and it's that horrible feeling. And some are just little mild flutter and you know what it is. And you know, we can talk about how I cope, because that was something that turned it around. Was once you understand it, understand your triggers, you can then begin to find out what works for you to help you through those situations.
So how old were you when you first recognized that you had anxiety or diagnosed?
My mum used to call me a worry wart. She just used to say, you worry too much about everything. How does my child worry about things that haven't happened to things that haven't happened to haven't happened?
Yeah.
And so I was a lot younger, but I suffered from anorexia in college, and I think that was one of the things that kind of it manifested in that way. And as I got older, I think I really noticed it happening about 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
So yeah, that was when I noticed it.
Okay. And you noticed it. Did you get a diagnosis for that, or was that a self-diagnosis?
I did go to the doctor. Sorry, headphones are dying. Technical hits. Hang on. I'm going to charge what can we do in the middle of a podcast when your headphones are dying?
Can you help people get organized?
Yes. No, so I read all the self-help books. I sort of didn't physically, I sort of felt like it wasn't enough of a thing to go to the doctor for, which is what everybody tends to end up thinking. They don't want the blood. I'm a bit worried. Is that a thing the doctor's going to be like, go away? Yeah. So I'd been practicing yoga for a long time, and it was a realization that the yogi way of breathing, calming your central nervous system down, actually, I took that as a tool for myself. And that was one of the biggest things that, you know, breath, breathing, calming yourself down with that was actually something that helped me. So that's when I knew that I had a way to figure out how to help it myself.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And so where are you now with your anxiety? Because, I mean, we all get stressed. I'm a business owner too, and I know that stress. But I don't struggle with anxiety. I get anxious, but it's not chronic in that sense that I can't control it. So with yourself, how has anxiety manifested in your business, and how do you actually work through that? I mean, excuse me, the breathing techniques, I think obviously that's superb and that would be a number one go-to, but how are you coping at the moment? And obviously with what's just been going on with the pandemic, you know, that's adding another layer, isn't it? So what have you been doing?
Well, I'm happy to say that my episodes are 10 times more manageable now than they were years ago. I think going away for the time that I was away in Bali helped me figure out a lot of stuff, because sometimes there's underlying issues that when you deal with things, they stop bothering the back of your brain. So that was a huge help. So now they're very manageable. I mean, a pandemic will throw some crap at you. Add a pandemic with the fact that I have an underlying health condition, which means I have a reduced immune system, which means I'm shielding. Fear just went up and my anxiety just went, ah. So I did all the things that I could do to try and cope with that. But now when it comes to business, there's so many ways, and I actually use these ways to help clients as well when it comes to feeling overwhelmed, because that's ultimately what it is.
Yeah.
There's methods to kind of break away, to time block your life and compartmentalize your work times, to hyper focus, because the biggest thing is your brain just jumps around when you're struggling with anxiety. Is to kind of find your own biohacking methods to hyper focus, and mine is to put my earphones in.
Sorry. Biohacking methods to hyper focus. Time blocking. What?
Okay, so cool. She says with the headphones that are about to die, so we'll have to interrupt this in a minute to replay. So when I was away in Bali, I was working out of cafes, like all these digital nomads, you know, air quotes. And there's people chatting and I can't concentrate. And so I put headphones in.
Yeah.
and I put productive music on that wasn't too disruptive, but that had enough motivation to keep me going and blocked out anything that my headphones weren't covering.
Yeah.
So then I learned to use music as a tool to calm down and focus. And the idea of it being right inside my head versus on a Bluetooth speaker across the room. And my diary becomes, you've got 1 hour you're doing this piece of work, get up, take a 10-minute break, walk around. The next hour you're doing that piece of work. And the phone goes on airplane mode. So you're not going, oh, tweet, oh, this, oh, Instagram, blah, 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 because that's the biggest thing where your brain is just jumbling around everywhere. So you just pull it down into a zone where you're calm. The music is, the association starts to happen that you put the headphones in, your brain goes into concentration mode. And the more you do that, the more it hyper focuses. So it's a little biohack. And one I've been doing recently, which I got off my business coach, is smell. And I've got one of those diffusers, which has a light and a smell on it. And I've been working through different essential oil smells to figure out which one helps me focus.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I wrote a post about that actually. I smell was one of the things that I put in there about sort of to help your well-being. And I got a lot of comments about it because it was like, oh, I didn't even think of that. It's like your environment is so important. Like everything about your environment, it's not just a case of, what desk you're sitting on or your chair and things like that. It's also the sights, the sounds, the smells, like you say, with the music. So that's really good. So with, obviously you're helping clients, manage their own overwhelm, and you're doing your own.
Yeah. How do I do that? Yeah, I know.
Yeah. How do you do that without getting overwhelmed yourself?
I'm a to-do list queen. I mean, I love the life out of Trello. Trello is an organizational board. It's like a massive board of post-its that you can organize, and it's project flow. So once you've done something, you can move it across to in progress or for next week or to done. And I basically write a to-do list at the end of every day, regardless. Sometimes I go old-fashioned and it's quite therapeutic to do it on paper, so I can visibly see it because I've got a million tabs open in the day. So I will to-do list everything, and each client has a board or a page in my notepads. And then it's done by priority, so that when I'm waking up, I'm not going to sleep fretting about, oh, what I need to remember to do that. Everything goes down. I have reminders on top of the time blocks within my diary to sort of tell me what I need to be doing and focusing on first. And it really is a bit of a brain dump. Once you get it out, you can kind of like a jigsaw puzzle, you can put it in levels of priority to action. So yeah, time blocking, to-do lists, and then kind of just deep focus and concentrate. But biggest thing is being able to switch off. I know it sounds crazy, but to switch on, sometimes you have to switch off.
Yeah. And
that's just taking a breath of fresh air at some point in the day. If you live in a flat, stick your head out the window. Something like that. And also for me, it's a little bit about rituals during the day. Because I was living in a shared house in Shielding, I couldn't be in the same room as anyone at the same time. That's the sort of extreme level of it. So we then worked out a kitchen rota. So my life became super regulated, and everyone would go, that sounds horrible. But it helped me figure out, right, well, I know at 12:30 I've got to get in the kitchen and cook lunch and make it work. So there became this kind of, right, okay, I've got certain hours in the day. What do I need to achieve? How am I going to achieve that? And it always starts with me having time for myself in the morning. And that's my little coffee ritual. I've got my little special coffee maker thing and my milk heater. And then I sit either looking out the window if it's cold, which is pretty much all the time, or I take that coffee and I put my headphones in and I listen to a podcast or I read a few pages of a book. And for me, that's my setup time. So that brings my stress levels down, because I know I haven't, it's grounding. I know I haven't rushed into the day 100 miles an hour. Yeah. And I feel like I've got more of me to give my clients when I feel like I've had some time for myself first.
Definitely. When you spend that time for yourself in the morning to literally to get grounded. I mean, you don't have to do a whole yoga asana to be able to actually ground yourself. It's just literally not having any other distraction there and just focusing in on yourself and your breathing and where your head's at, how your body's feeling as well. Sometimes we sleep badly, don't realize it. And that is going to have an effect on our productivity for that day. So where are you now? So you've got all the things. I think you've got a really good toolbox for helping cope with your anxiety. I think it's superb. The breathing, absolutely. The time blocking, the music, all excellent things. So where are you now with your business? Because you're growing. Now, growth is also stressful because it's something new, and then you're going to be responsible for more people, and because you're taking the extra service that you're offering now is, I guess, in teaching in a way to train up others who want to become VAs. So how are you managing that transition? Like, did you sort of, I guess, are you planning ahead? So as a coach, if I was working with you, I would say, right, so you've got this big thing coming up. Rather than do the big thing and then try and manage the anxiety after, let's prepare for how the anxiety could manifest, like what the triggers could possibly be, especially if they're things that you could compare. So for instance, like you coming back from Bali could be, comparative in terms of, oh, if it doesn't work, what happens? What do I do? So I would sort of go through that motion. So how did you decide, right, yes, I'm ready for growth. I'm going to do this. It's going to be a lot of work and stress. And that's just the launch bit. That's not even the delivery of said service. So how have you sort of navigated that?
Great. So many questions.
Interview mode, not coach mode. But yeah.
I love it. Okay. Well, first of all, everything that in terms of me being now a VA coach and mentor, that was an organic role when I was starting to grow and the business was getting leads for new clients, more capacity than I had to give anybody. I knew it meant that I needed a team. I had to outsource. Yeah. The irony being that my clients realize they've got to a growth point where they need to outsource so that they can focus on what matters to them. I hit the same point. And I just went, not ready. And then I was just like, right, where are the VAs? Where are the people that want to do admin in the long term? And I'm not just talking about a graphic designer who's happy to help me out for 3 months. I want someone I can secure for a client for the long term. And I really struggled to find them. And then I spoke to a great friend of mine who's a social media strategist. And she said, she changed the way I engage basically and changed the content that I put on social media. So I then started to put educational stuff out. And it became this kind of, I'd just thrown a net out and I caught some fish because people were going, that's so useful. And I was going, is it? It's just what I do every day. So then these people were coming to me going, how are you doing what you're doing? And how did you learn? And how did you get into it? And how did you find clients? And what do you charge? And I went, right, I'm going to have to train these newbies up. I'm going to have to bring them in. I'm going to have to write some guidelines for them to operate in the way that I operate, to take on board my clients, because I'm a perfectionist. I'm a recovering perfectionist. So it started as I love that because it's never ending, right? Recovering perfectionist.
And I did the irony. I actually posted a blog post today about how to stop being a perfectionist. So you can read that after this.
Thanks, Pooja, I shall. So it was an organic role from writing a guidelines to get these girls on board to be able to teach them. I started putting down how I know how to do what I do. And then I started mentoring. And I forget that this is something I've done years in the past with interns and kids. And I was working with youth from socially deprived backgrounds and mentoring them. And it was the most satisfying thing I ever did. And they've all gone on to do great things and are still in touch. So it triggered that point where I was just like, wow, this is really cool. I love doing this. So I just put my head down and wrote 73 pages. And I went, this is a bit much.
The last time we spoke, it was 60. Because actually, when I saw your Instagram post today, I was like, 73 pages. I swear she was at 60 when she'd finished it. But okay, look at you.
Comes all the design.
Yeah.
So yeah, it rolled into that. And it rolled into that kind of growth pattern. My headphones dying. It rolled into growing and teaching. So now I've just launching this whole VA mentoring side. So I get to help the next generation of VAs, but it's also something that I'm hugely passionate about in terms of my little life's mission, which I've been working on this year, is to actually help 1,000 women launch their own businesses, because there's not enough female CEOs out there, and we lack, there's a confidence disparity between men and women that's enormous, and we not only need to just give them a book and send them on their way, they need constant support, empowerment, encouragement. And that's what I've discovered kind of organically through working on that this year. But now I've forgotten what the rest of your questions were.
So my questions were based around, you are growing your business, and with that comes stress and potential anxiety. So how did you prepare for that anxiety, or did you just sort of, I've got this stuff to do, I know where I want to go, I'm just going to do it, and I've got my toolkit, so I'll just deal with it when and if it happens? Or did you plan beforehand?
Huge portion of planning it out. I knew it was going to be a long labor of love, because when you launch something new, there's so much front loading, and I knew that I needed to balance that out with maintaining excellent service levels for my clients. So everything was a great big plan, where I didn't know how to do certain things, like really launch this, really work on the products, and put those products across in a way that would make sense, that would serve the needs of the people that wanted them. I got a business coach on board who filled the gap in my knowledge, and her and I worked on a massive plan. So I could see this, and I could move the timeline as and when I needed to, depending on what happens. But everything is planned out. So now I think very much next month, I know what I'm doing all the way through to the end of August. Everything is planned out. Things like my content, my marketing, that's planned, and I batch things together so that I'm not piecemealing little bits and bobs. I plan, I financially forecast where I can. I contingency plan for when the plans might not work. But the methods are to be able to look ahead and reverse engineer where you're trying to go.
Yeah.
And so in doing that, you can then apportion how much time you need to spend on client work, or I treat the VA mentoring almost as another client, because it's that much workload. But I know it's my passion project, so I don't mind. But there's I think my mental capacity, or my mentality, accepted that there was going to be this huge body of work that it was going to take, and I just had to lean into that for a little while and just fully accept that I probably needed to just go hug a tree or stand in some grass and just take a big deep breath, because it's not all easy.
I was thinking, actually, it's funny that you said that. I was thinking today, I was like, now that sort of, the whole lockdown measures are easing and stuff, and the weather hopefully will sort of stay a little bit warm, I was thinking of hosting something with like my previous clients, and just sort of like gather them round to do a grounding circle of sorts. Like literally, I'm not going to coach you. Let's just come chill, get a bit peaceful, get aligned with our purposes, and just zen out completely. So it's funny that you were saying that about grounding, because I was literally thinking, we'll just go to a park and take our socks off and just stand in the grass for a bit, hug a tree, and just why not?
Glad I'm not the only one that sounds like a hippie. All my friends take the mickey.
No, not at all. This is totally speaking to my the other part of my me, if you like. So it's something that you said when you were just talking was about passion project. And now for me, in the work that I do, passion project says to me purpose. Is this your purpose? And how did you decide that this was your purpose?
The duality of what I do now is I love both things, because I get so much satisfaction from seeing my clients' lives change for the better. Like I took on a new client recently who runs a clothing brand. She's not even 30 and it's doing exceptionally well. Within 3 weeks of us working together, she turned around and said, I've taken a weekend off for the first time in 18 months. Someone hasn't a weekend off in that long, and they turn around and go, thank you. That hits all my happy brain receptors. I'm like, this is why I do it, because people see a difference.
Yeah.
And that satisfaction is there on the client side. And then on the VA side, if somebody can experience and live their life and change it in the way that I've done, and have half the satisfaction from having the freedom and the flexibility, fully accepting that it's not always easy and it's going to be a little bit more stressful, but the rewards are so much deeper and so much better. That's why I do it, because at the end of the day, I was in a lovely corporate job, which I absolutely loved, but I was really fed up of being a box and you know, HR questioning why I've got another doctor's appointment. And I'm going, well, I've got a wonky immune system, so I'm going to be out more. And now you're asking me if I'm interviewing for another job, and you want me to fill out the 12th form, you know, in 3 months.
Yeah.
And you start to feel not like a human being, and like no one actually cares.
Yeah.
So that was a big catalyst for me changing it, so that I could have the freedom to go to my appointments or to take a yoga class in the middle of the day and look after myself.
Because I think you definitely get to a point in life in general. Well, some of us get to a point in life in general where it's just like, nah, I'm not doing this anymore. This does not serve me. This is not how I want to end my days. No, not going to do it. So, I mean, I missed your discount. I'm not going to lie. So that's, you know, it does.
I used to work at Paper J.
I know it makes me sad when you talk about it, but it's. You had to do the right thing for yourself, and you didn't even know what you were doing. You didn't know what you were doing, but when you chose to take that sabbatical, there wasn't a map there. It was literally, I need to take a sabbatical, and that was it. You just laser focused into doing that.
Yeah.
You did it. What was supposed to be 3 months ended up a year with a business, lots of emotional transformational work as well. And you come back and it's like, honestly, like as your friend, I can see such a difference in you. And I mean, we're all on a growth journey if you choose to be, and it will be forever. So you will constantly be growing. It's not like this is you done now because you've had those 2 experiences. It's going to constantly evolve. But I can recognize within you as a friend the change that's happened. And most of it is that you're a lot calmer.
I came back from Bali and everybody was like, oh, you're so chilled.
So chill, like you're so much more chill. And considering obviously all the worry and the anxiety that you've experienced, and you know, we've been friends a long time, but it wasn't something that we discussed. It's not something that was made known. And really, mental health stuff is only really in the last 2 or 3 years it's been getting a voice, and people are starting to be open about their struggles with anxiety or depression and stuff. So that wasn't a dialogue that we had when you were going through your stuff and I was going through mine. But there is a stark difference in that you are more chill. And I think it is testament to those boundaries that you've created and having that, like, do you know what the word is? The word is discipline. The discipline to prioritize your needs first. It's not like you're being told you've got to do this. You know you need to do it because you've got a compromised immune system. You know you need to do it because of you're not living in your own house, you're living with other people, so you're putting things in, you're mindful of your time with obviously clients. And you know, like,
yeah,
I don't know if it was at the top of this podcast or a call, but if I was working with a VA right now, I would be demanding because I've got quite a lot on my to-do list, you know, that needs to get done.
But I love it because I feel like their agony aunt, you know, they just go, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. And I'm like, well, I know what that feels like. Because if I figured it out myself, then I can give you those methods and those tools and just take that stress level down. And I think you're right. It's also when you find your purpose, because it's like a give and receive. Like once you hit that point where you're just like, this is great, you're like, this is, the positivity goes back into it, comes back and goes back and forth. It kind of ultimately resonates so much deeper that you're doing the right thing, because you know it in your bones and in all of your bouncing DNA and your cells. You feel like you're on the right track, and that's exactly where I am now, more so than I have ever been, because there's this kind of like, yes, hands on hips, superwoman, I'm doing my own thing, you know, but I know I'm positively affecting other people's lives. And then out of that, it happens to have built a business. So I feel so lucky to have that, and to have the levels of job satisfaction are crazy. But, you know, being an entrepreneur, it does come with its stresses and strains. I won't sugarcoat it. It's like sweating in the middle of the night sometimes, but there's always a way around it. There's always a thing that you can do. There's always a way to take care of yourself. But if you've got the discipline and the resilience and the resourcefulness, there's not a problem you can't handle. But it ultimately, to be able to give this knowledge to other people so that they have the chance to start their own thing. And sometimes it's scary, it's super scary. And it's the only reason that I started it was because I was around a bunch of digital nomads and remote freelancers where they were like, of course you can do this. Yeah, come on. And it was that constant daily support, courage, and enthusiasm for it. I was like, okay. And that is exactly what I think is like, you don't just give someone something and then just run away. It's like it's the being there and constantly supporting it. So, I get people in my DMs all the time and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll help. Because it's a passion. It's really cool to be able to do this and to be able to help other people on that journey and then make clients' lives better. Like, it's great.
I love it. And it really shows. It really shows through and through with, obviously like your growth, but obviously with everything else you can see. So, okay, so let's shift gears now into, now I talked about myself needing a VA, and I do, but I need to really decide what I want my VA to do. So what I'm okay doing and what I need. And is it a VA that I need, or am I looking for a social media manager or whatever? So I'm in a different space. Ideally, I'd like everything, but right, the whole team. So whilst I'm working up to my team, when is somebody going to need a VA? Can you describe the situation? So can you don't describe me. I'm always
describe you. Okay.
Don't describe me. But when would a normal person who is running their own business, a founder-led entrepreneurs, just them, and they are coming to a point where overwhelm setting in, but they can't recognize it necessarily, what does that actually look like?
What does it look like? It looks like so close to burnout and growth at the same time. And it's that point where you are drowning in all the little itty bitty things. And as a business owner, you've got client leads that you can't get to before they turn cold. And also you're forgetting to chase an invoice and you madly need the payment. And what are you doing? How are you getting lost in so much stuff? It's that overwhelm of feeling like you can't get your head above water on the day to day because your business is reaching that tipping point where you massively need to outsource, but you're almost so overwhelmed. You come to the table and go, I don't know what it is I need to change, but something has to give.
Yeah.
In order for you to either take the time to be creative and be able to drive your business forward and create whatever it is you're doing, or chase leads and grow your business, or you really, really need to spend time with your husband or your child or your friends or your family, or take a break to refresh.
Yeah.
It's that point of pure overwhelm. And I mean it in a positive way, because you're getting to the point where you can grow if you get your systems right, if you get the help in place, if you outsource to grow, you can see the positivity in it. Or you can choose to sit there completely overwhelmed and go nowhere with it. And that's kind of that point where you just are drowning in stuff. You need help, but your to-do list gets longer at the end of the day, not shorter.
So what would you say, because this is something that happens quite often, I've seen it, we're sort of in similar circles in terms of sort of like the coaching, the mentoring side of things. And someone says, oh, I can't afford a VA. Now, I've looked at VA pricing, and I can, it depends on, price is based on your value perception. So how you perceive, what you value in something, if you can see the value in something. And so when someone is in that sort of space of, they've probably got, they're between 0 and 3 years of their business that could have started as a side hustle or a full time. They may or may not have had cash in the bank to do it. So they might be at break even, but if they invest in a VA, that break even doesn't then obviously happen. That gets delayed. Now, with our business heads on, we know that it's only a short delay, and it will, we know that because we know what the future looks like. But when you're in that space, in that headspace of that overwhelm, spending another 600 quid a month on something that you need, that you're drowning, but your business is just almost there. How do you work with people like that? So when people come to you and say, oh, I really need a VA, no, I can't afford it. How do you navigate that?
It's an interesting one, because I've had a couple of my long-term clients, I'd made contact with them and built that relationship with them before they were ready. before they could financially feel comfortable doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, the relationship was built, and we had a conversation. We perhaps had a second just baby check-in to see where they were at. And then when they felt like, okay, let's do this, then they flipped the switch, they made the call. And it was within, I think, so I had a client who couldn't afford me, and then it was May, and then by July she was like, okay, I've got it squared away, I'm good, what's your minimum commitment? And okay, well, it's like 3 months realistically to see a difference, but you notice it within a few weeks because you'll see the shift. And what was amazing is that she was a space designer and a sort of a thought leader in the humans interacting in space and how we design our offices for productivity. And she only had one client at the time. Within 1 to 2 months of me coming on board, I'd taken the systems and mapped out the business and taken the overload off of her, that she went and got clients 2, clients 3, clients 4. So the difference in her, she just went, great, I'm ready, it works. But also mentally, you have to be ready to let go of all of those things. There are certain people who are micromanagers and control freaks. And I speak from a place of OCD, so I understand it.
Not micromanager, but the control freak part.
Yeah.
You know what I struggle with, and I'm sure that a lot of, we tend to be, those of us who go into that entrepreneurial journey, and I know a lot of my friends have been quite concerned about me exploring different avenues, where it doesn't bother me because I believe in one life and it's there to live. Like I don't believe
9-to-5ers who've never worked themselves, so it's terrifying to them.
I don't believe that God put me on this earth to be an accountant. I really strongly believe that there was something else, but he's not going to say, here, Puj, be an accountant, set yourself up with a 6-figure job, get your 4-bed detached house in Buckinghamshire and all fancy with your cars, and that's it. By 32 you'll be done, and then just keep spending money. I don't believe that was written for me, and it wasn't, so hence doing the markets, the farmers markets, and doing jams and chutneys, working in a sex shop, working in retail. Why not? It's the money is for my bank account, not yours, for other people to see, but it's just it's a thing. Now, what was my point? So I'm more of a but if they don't do it as good as I do person, right? That whole perfectionist coming out. So how do you deal with us perfectionists?
There's a level of you that I can deal with, and there's a level I can't. I won't lie. I have fully had there's the difficult ones where I've butted heads with, because I've gone from nightmare clients because in the beginning you just go yeah, and then you go, how have I ended up with someone who's making me cry? They're so mean. To figuring out what your dream client looks like. That was a whole journey, right? So I'm on the dream client side now because it's a personality fit, funnily enough. But on the kind of the nightmare where the OCD and the control freakness was too much, was they're capable of doing all of these tasks, and they are very reluctant to hand it over to you and trust that you'll do it. So they were picking holes in things that weren't there. They were holding back. They weren't giving me the tools I needed. So I'm kind of like, I can't do it until you hand it over. Like, let it go.
To me.
So there's a level of, you've got to take a big, deep breath, and you've got to know that this person is great at what they do, and you need to trust that, and you need to breathe and give it a month. And if it doesn't work after a month, you can pull a ripcord. You should always contractually be able to pull a ripcord. But in order to do that, you need to give someone a chance. That's the biggest thing, and it is very difficult. But if a good VA comes on board, they'll find out how you do things, how you like things done, what your pain points are, what your brand voice is, what your goals are. Like, it's a whole, we're like a consultant agony aunt. We come in and go, what is it that you want to achieve? Right. Priorities. How do you want it done? What do you like? What don't you like? So we work with the personality, but if you're too controlling, it's impossible.
I might have to send you an email later and say, I need this, Mel. Here are my bullet points. You know me, so you can brief me into your team and get me the best person for the job, because like I'm literally like, as you're talking to me, I'm half paying attention, half making a list in my head of the things I'm going to send you after this call, after this podcast. So what you were saying there about trust, I just want to pipe in that with that, because we tend to not believe enough in ourselves, and then that also like manifests in these sorts of activities, like trusting other people with our business and doing those things. But it does boil down to, what's the plan? What did you want for your business? Apple was not built by just one man started it, but then he had to get other people to contribute to make it the business that it is today.
At the ability, outsource.
Correct, exactly. So there's a big exercise there, I think, for trusting in ourselves and our intuition. And, when you're vibing off somebody, everything is about relationships. And like you said, personality, about identifying your dream client, is really who you want to spend time with day in, day out, and pretty much it. It's quite simple. People buy from people. So it's 100%. That whole thing. So let's get to wrapping this up with some of your recommendations for well-being when you're starting off as a business owner. I think that sits quite nicely with what you're doing as a VA. So what top 3 tips would you give to any business owner, new business owner right now, that is probably not putting a priority on their well-being, be it mental or physical?
First things is, you're doing this because you're designing a life that you want. So within that design, you really, really need to make sure that well-being is part of it. And so make sure that you are booking and planning time off and away, because also creativity comes when you stop working. It's that thing that comes rushing in when you give your brain time to switch off. So boundary yourself is the biggest one. Do not work every night until 9 p.m. I'm guilty of that lately with launching and stuff, but I know it's temporary, but you cannot do that all the time. So boundary yourself with your time. And for me, my method was pre-pandemic, was making sure that I had things to do in the evening that meant I was committing to seeing a friend or a family member, and I would then switch off because I had no choice. And, you get I've got stuff to do. But once you get into that situation, you actually go, thank God I've done this. Otherwise, you'll work your socks off and you'll burn out. So set your own boundaries for yourself. Sounds weird, but it works. For me, some of my grounding is being outside, being able to take a walk, being able to look at the sky and breathe in the air and just be away from technology. So phone down time is also really important. And just managing time blocking is one of my favorite things to do, because if you look at my schedule, you think, oh dear God, that looks like a lot, but it's just me going, right, this is the priorities, and I'm putting that in the first thing I do. And we were talking about biohacking. Figure out when you work best, because everyone's rhythms are different. And my productivity is first thing in the morning until lunchtime. I hit 3 o'clock and I'm like, I don't do any client calls after 3. Everything that I do that I need my brain to engage on is first thing in the morning. And the afternoon, I do different work, content batching or emails for clients. But in terms of brain engaged stuff, morning. So figure out, like, you might be a night owl. So that's the sort of the biohacking. You're figuring out, you're learning about yourself and what works, what makes you tick when you tick best. And so, a combination of all of those.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm only since that child came along. Otherwise, I was a night owl before. But that child,
you were such a night owl.
From my career in hospitality, like I was out every night, wasn't I? Anyway, that changed 4 years ago. So I've learned. I had to do a new biohack basically after having a child, which was, don't get up when he gets up, get up before he gets up. And literally, as he's gotten older, he's gotten more demanding with time and mummy. And I find that the only way for me to get that time for myself is to wake up at least an hour, sometimes 2 hours before he does, just so I can like go, okay, where am I today? Because
That's the mom hack. That's such a common mom hack, and it's golden.
it is. And I'd like, honestly, I tell everybody, it's like, start with 10 minutes. But trust me, once you've had those 10 minutes, you are going to see the value in creating that hour, and you can create it. But yeah, so I'm very now, like I'm messaging people at 7 o'clock in the morning whilst I'm making my coffee, because I'm like, no, do you know what? It's okay, because I know come 3 o'clock, I'm done. I'm done. The most you're going to get out of me is a bit of social chit chat. And even that, sometimes it's like, no, it's Real Housewives only time. I need that complete escape. Yeah. So Mel, before we go, how can people find you? How can people hire you? I'm sure there's going to be a queue out the door now.
If you go to thelifestyleva.net, there's 2 sections on there: hire a VA or become a VA, and all the things that I'm launching are under become a VA. Make a start today, any day. And you can find me on Instagram at Mel the Lifestyle VA, and so you get all my fun geekiness daily on there.
Excellent. Well, Mel, thank you so much for coming back to the show. I think that was brilliant.
Having me.
I'm literally like, I really need to get a VA.
He's like, I'm gonna make a plan. Do it. Best thing you ever did.
I will. Thank you, hon. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Self-Care 101 podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you would subscribe, rate and review so that other people like you can find the show. For more tips and tricks, you can follow me on the socials at Frankly Coaching, or visit my website to find out more about my coaching programs and how to work with me at franklycoaching.com. Talk to you soon.